This was my very first gimbal, the DJI Ronin S. This was my first experience with the smooth, stabilized footage that a gimbal is advertised to do. From this, I upgraded from the Ronin S to the DJI RS2. And this guy was great. It felt a little bit closer to the ultra smooth footage that a gimbal was advertised to do. One awesome thing is these rotation locks. Those should have been there from the beginning. However, this RS2 never quite felt perfectly smooth like it was advertised to be. The shots were crooked, they just weren't perfect. I upgraded to this guy because for the first time with the DJI RS3, I felt like I was getting the incredibly smooth footage that I was always supposed to be getting. But there is just one thing. Why do I have to get all of this when all I really want is this? Let's talk about that, and I'm gonna give you all my insights from using this DJI RS3 Pro.
I recorded that intro almost 2 years ago now. It's time to finally get into it and talk about my Ronin. So I'm going to start by mentioning some of the components that I used to use but don't anymore. This is how I roughly had it set up to start. I was using the DJI side handles. I had a SmallRig base plate so that I didn't have to use the original battery with a tripod on the bottom just to sit it flat on the table. On this side, I would attach a V-mount battery that would power both my monitor and the Ronin itself. I very quickly started to notice that the Ronin just wasn't performing as well with the V-mount battery as it did with the stock battery, so I made that change back to the stock battery to start with. From there, I expanded into this setup, switching the stock battery back on, and that quickly improved the Ronin performance. You'll notice I have some gaff tape wrapped around this end of the arm here. That's because it would cut up my forearm on either side when I would go to hit the start and stop recording button. So that was frankly just a safety measure to keep myself from getting cut up. This is the setup that I used the longest amount of time. The idea was that you could loosen this thumb screw, flip this handle back into a rear handle for a lower slung mode, but that just didn't really happen in practice. Something about this thumb screw, no matter how tight you got it, it would always loosen up every couple minutes. You can see here, when I really crank down on it, there's still some play in that mount, and so that was just really frustrating to work with. From here, I upgraded into what I use now, which is essentially my final form of the Ronin setup. Starting off here in the center, this is the DJI RS3 Pro gimbal head. This is the same gimbal head that I've been using for the past 2+ years at this point. I really have no reason to upgrade beyond this. If I didn't already have a gimbal, then I would jump right up to the RS4. However, since I do, I don't really have a reason to switch. We're actually not going to begin the build with the gimbal head itself. We're going to jump over here to the Tilta dual handle power supply bracket. They also sell a V-mount plate that attaches directly to this. That V-mount will serve as a battery backup for the gimbal itself, as well as power our monitor coming later on. So we're gonna get that attached with some bolts. Now there are two major reasons that I picked this side handle system. First being that it integrates the original Ronin battery directly into it. So you're not carrying the Ronin battery and additional side handles that don't serve a purpose. And the second reason being just how integrated this V-mount plate is into the system. Once I have it bolted on, it sits perfectly flush with the bottom. It's really a custom made V-mount plate specifically for this system. And then here on the bottom of the plate, you can see just how the V-mount plate sits perfectly flush with the bottom, so it sits flat on the surface still without any extra hardware protruding. Now that we have that on there, we'll go ahead and grab our gimbal head and attach it right on top, lock it down, and then we can put the other side handle right on the other side of this setup. and this side handle extension piece will slide right onto the NATO rail on the bottom of this handle and then tighten down with that thumb screw. Next up, we'll grab the original Ronin battery, and it just attaches here on the left side and tightens down with a thumb screw on the back. Here on the other side, we'll use the Tilta remote control handle for advanced ring grip. Now obviously we're not using it with the full ring grip, but it does have some other mounts that come with it. So that just slides right onto the NATO rail and clamps down. On top of that handle, I have a Qualcomm F22 little mounting plate that we'll go over here in a minute. But for this Tilta remote control handle to properly work, it needs this little adapter that it comes with, and that slides right onto the NATO rail on the side of the Ronin and locks in place. And that'll allow it to communicate directly with the gimbal. So looking down on this setup, you can see I have power for the gimbal. I'll have a V-mount that mounts right in this spot. That'll be backup power for the gimbal, as well as power for my monitor, my external monitor of the camera. And then on the right side, I have this remote control grip. And what that allows me to do is control all of the gimbal modes, positioning, move it around. I can manually focus via the wheel here on the front, and I can start and stop rolling. So with this setup, I'm able to keep both my hands on the handles. I don't have to move one up to start and stop rolling. I'm able to do that right here from the handles, and it keeps everything rock solid. Next up, I'm using the back handle that comes with the Ronin itself. So that'll slide right onto the NATO rail on the other side, opposite of the wireless receiver. And then the handle just tilts up to be both a back handle if I want to go underslung mode, but also I like to rest that on my shoulder just as another point of contact when I'm using this gimbal setup. As we have it here, this does balance on a table, but there's not much to keep it from tipping forwards or back. So I've used this little L bracket. This is just an Arca Swiss L bracket that I had for an old camera. I was unable to find the link for this specific one. However, you probably can work out something similar to mount here on the side of the rear handle, just to act as another foot, another point of contact when you set this down on a table to make it more steady. So you can see with this L bracket attached is just another foot. Now it is rock solid to set down on a table. You can feel comfortable with it, and it's not gonna go anywhere. While we have it in this form, I'm gonna attach this SmallRig V-mount plate to the bottom of our camera arm. This is gonna allow us to mount a V-mount battery on the bottom of the camera itself and just serve as a power backup for that. On the left side here, on top of the original Ronin battery, is where I like to mount my monitor. However, since this is just a single 1/4-20 thread, I was never able to get a super great connection. So I got this newer Ronin base plate that is form fit to the bottom of that handle and gives me multiple 1/4-20 and 3/8 threads that have locating pins. It allows me to really lock things down rock solid to make sure nothing rotates or comes loose over time. And then on top of that is just gonna be our monitor mount. This is gonna really vary person to person based on your preferences of monitor mount, based on your monitor itself. Here I'm using one from Wooden Camera, their little monitor hinge, some components from that, as well as some random screws and bolts that really keep everything locked down. This completes the majority of the Ronin build itself, so it's time to get some batteries, some cables, some other accessories mounted on here so that we're ready to roll. And now I've got everything laid out that will serve as the camera package. So let's go ahead and get this thing ready to shoot with. First of all, being the FX Lion Nano 2, we'll put that on the lower V-mount plate, as well as an FX Lion Nano 1 that will attach to the bottom of the gimbal head. And then we'll go ahead and get the camera prepared. This is the Sony FX3, which is what I'm normally running on here. I also run the crop sensor FX30 at times, just depending on what lens and what package and look I'm going for. I always keep a Tilta cage on all three of my camera bodies, so it's got an Arca plate built into the bottom that fits perfectly onto the Ronin plate. And then on top of this camera, I normally run the Sennheiser MKE 400. This is kind of my go-to shotgun mic just for running on a gimbal. This package can now slide onto the gimbal plate. Next up, we have my favorite on-camera monitor. This is the SmallHD Ultra 5. Once you go with the SmallHD monitor, I don't think you'll ever go with anything else again. The quality, the build, the OS, everything about them is great. So this is an extremely expensive monitor. However, I absolutely love it and always rock it on this setup. This will just attach here on the left side above the original Ronin battery. On the right side is where I sometimes mount an Insta360 camera just for a behind the scenes look. It's easy to throw on there and capture some cool content showing me shooting, but also what I'm shooting. Just get a good overview of the shot. Now to get everything wired up, first up is this USB-C cable that will run from the FX3's power delivery port into the V-mount battery that's mounted right below it. And this will just mean that I can run all day long, never having to worry about my Sony battery dying. From there, I run a micro USB to USB-C cable into the gimbal head from the camera body, and this allows the side handle communicating through the Ronin head to control the focus and start-stop recording of the camera itself. That's what allows me to use some of these controls over here on the right. From there, we have this SmallRig to 2-pin LEMO D-tap cable. This will go from my bottom V-mount battery up into the monitor and power the monitor itself. This again will vary based on the monitor you have and what setup you're working with. What I really like about keeping this back handle on here is I can go underslung without having to move any handles around. Everything is locked down and this monitor has room for me to tilt up and see it. In underslung mode, I'm also able to hold this back handle with my left hand, come over here and control the camera with my right hand if I need to. So it really allows a lot of versatility without having to move things around or adjust things during a shot. Finally, I plug in an HDMI cable from the camera itself into the monitor just so I'll be able to see my picture on there. This specific cable I don't have linked because it's just an HDMI cable. Find one that works for you and go with it. Now this is our full rig ready to shoot aside from putting a lens on this body. I use a lot of different lenses in this setup depending on what I'm shooting. Everything from a 10mm, 16 to 35, 24 to 70, prime lenses, or even a 70 to 200 that I run a lot of the times. So it can really vary depending on what you want to put on there. One final piece that I bring on every shoot is this sack. It's a Cinesaddle knockoff made by the brand Sack, and it's essentially a beanbag chair with a strap that you can put over your shoulder and rest your camera on for some extra stabilization, some extra balance, and to really take the weight off your arms during a shoot. This is the final setup. I'm really pleased with how it's evolved over time, and I really feel like this is the perfect setup for me. I'm able to control everything, get all the functionality I want without having to move my hands around. I'm able to get underslung without having to move handles around. It's just got everything I want in a gimbal setup. If you found this video helpful, liked this rig build, be sure to subscribe and check out some of my other content. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.